Greetings, men on fire. Welcome back to Disenthrall. I am Patrick Smith. Today I have my partner in victimless crime, Kaysen, with me. Welcome back, Kaysen. It's
Hello.
been a little while. You've been working really hard.
Let's go straight into the viewer query of today. What is our
Let us.
viewer query of today?
So this is the top of the stack, and we should probably start at the bottom for the people that submitted a long time ago. But this was a recent submission to our content submission form you can find in the description. They have a question on ethics. This is submitted by Anonymous. Actually, they named themselves Merry Christmas Brother. So the question was, what are the ethics of revenge? If self-defense fails and it is not possible to make the victim whole, can there be any moral revenge? Did you see what I did there with the
revenge?
Did you see what I did there with Men on Fire in the intro?
Yeah.
The movie Man on Fire. It's about Creasy, right? The guy's name's Creasy, and he's like this ex-special forces badass, and he's like in charge of protecting this little girl that gets abducted, and then he just goes on this like insane righteous vengeance upon the bad guys. It's amazing. Anyway, revenge. Anyway, yeah.
See how he tied that in there?
I try and
everybody?
do this. Do you have the definition for revenge?
So revenge is the action of inflicting hurt or harm on someone for an injury or wrong suffered at their hands.
Yes. So I would say the first thing, like when examining the ethics of any situation, the motive of the people, like the thing inside people's heads that may or may not be the thing leading them to take the action, is sort of immaterial to the ethics. I can't imagine a situation, and correct me if you can think of one, I can't imagine a situation in which what the person was thinking in their heads would change the ethics of that situation. And when I say the ethics, I mean that it would change the restitution owed. It would change the ability of the people to react or respond in a certain way. I don't think what's in I don't think what's in your head. I don't think your motive can affect any of those things.
On a baseline ethics, absolutely. I think for the way that people would, in general organize, you might get like, oh, premeditated murder is worse than a crime of passion. But that's not the ethics of the situation. That's more like the personal aesthetics. Oh, man, that feels wrong coming out of my mouth. That's like the layers of ethics on top of ethics. The ethics that people agree to. The societal norms. Man, that sounds very statist. I don't like saying this.
I think you bring up a good point. And we've talked about this distinction previously, especially with doorbell bombs, if you'll remember. That the sort of, and I think you gave me this term, but it's the best one I've heard so far, sort of a state of nature ethics situation. So what that means is like absent any civilized society, absent any free society dispute resolution organizations or insurance companies or pre-agreed on and pre-consented to ways of resolving disputes, absent any of that structure, like two people on an island and they're interacting and we're talking about the ethics of that. That is often different than how we think it'll be handled in a free society, because like the fundamental first principles philosophy ethics happen in that state of nature, and it's often messy and it's often way more uncomfortable than what would probably happen in a civilized, organized, free society. So I think there might be those two different answers to this particular question too, right?
So let's start with the base of state of nature. So what is the overarching, what's the results of revenge in a state of nature, Patrick?
Well,
Someone comes at you and they, go ahead.
Again, I think that part of this question is immaterial. I think at the state of nature level, time does not factor into the equation down at this level. Like, what I mean by time is time since infraction occurred doesn't exist down at this level. That adds subjectivity, that adds interpretation based on culture and based on the people you live around. It adds all this stuff that doesn't really exist in this state of nature. So what that means is, if somebody did something to you, let's say stole your property or damaged your property, including your body property, let's say, that signals that they no longer reciprocate rights, because rights are simply a mutual understanding between sentient people. And so, and the nap is just probably the best definition we have for an understanding that can be reciprocated between people. But what I'm saying is if if two people on an island and one of them stops reciprocating, that is to say they attack person or property, then the other person no longer has an onus or a requirement to respect that person's property back. And what that means is that they can now freely attack back. This is also a really complicated way of describing self-defense. So this person gives up their right to expect the victim to respect their rights back in attacking. Does that make sense? So in this state of nature, the reciprocity is all that we really talk about. And when one side stops doing it, the other one doesn't have to do it ever again. Now, you might make the case, and this probably adds layers up into a civilized society, you might make the case that the attacker could eventually make restitution, but which would then, cause the victim to need to start reciprocating again. But that couldn't be the case in the state of nature level unless the victim agreed that restitution has been made and consented to then re-engage with reciprocity with that person in the state of nature. How is that? How is that case? Did I explain that well, or was I unclear?
Yeah, I think you explained it well, and it brings up like these weird emotional things where it's like, I think that would be really scary, and I would very much have a market desire to go out and find a way to limit those risks. So if an accident occurs, I don't forever become Inigo Montoya's the six-fingered man who he's coming after throughout the entire Princess. But that's who we should have greeted everybody as. Hello, Inigo Montoyas. Oh, that was such a good one. Have you seen that?
Is that
he's
the
like
one
the
where
he's a revenge meme?
It's like, I am Inigo Montoya, prepare to die. Is that one? I've seen that.
You killed
movie.
my father.
Yes.
Prepare to die.
Yep, I've seen
that. That is the guy.
It's been a really long time.
Yeah, so I think if like my immediate reaction was like, oh, that's kind of scary. I would want to, it's very motivating to go out and like, hey, everybody, let's all make a deal to not want to kill each other 10 years down the line for, bumping into your car, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and it's also worth pointing out that when we talk about these state of nature situations, this is a situation that will never happen unless Fallout apocalypse happens and there is no more society on any level. We're just talking about like
video game apocalypse.
Yeah. We're just talking about like how ethics would apply before you add levels of common decency to them, right? Because common decency is subjective and it's based on community and societal norms, and you have to agree to this stuff in the community that you live in a free society. So
common decency is subjective. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead. What's your next example? Once you added this subjective common decency.
So now that we've got like the state of nature out of the way, then we can talk about like what we think in a free society, how this stuff would be handled, right? And again, I would start by saying that the motive probably wouldn't factor into it any more than it probably does in the normal kind of common law based system that we have now. Maybe in the case of like, I don't know, what's an example of how it would affect things now? Accidents is probably the big one. So if I accidentally damage you, that would probably make the outcome for me different than if I had maliciously done it. But that's only in cases where you can prove such things. It's probably easier to prove
versus road rage.
Yeah, it's probably easy. Well, that's like a temporary insanity thing, or insanity. There's all sorts of defenses that get added into the mix when we're up here at the societal level, where I guess they probably begin taking into account motive.
So that's the state of nature then, as far as if you're just on a desert island and someone comes and aggresses against you, you have unleashed. You can do whatever you need to do or want to do at that point because they've lost their reciprocity agreement with you. So I wouldn't want that. I would want to have some kind of third party or something like that we could go to and be like, hey, it was an accident. I didn't mean to do a fender bender. Please don't let him destroy me on a cage match pushing doorbell bombs in Ancapistan. I don't want that. So thank you, ANCAP 101 and Mr. Hodel, for that idea. Especially with the new licking thing that's going on. They're licking doorbells. Like, doorbell bomb would have solved that one. Anyway, so...
That's a good point.
So, I think one mistake that people make whenever they're asking these kinds of questions is they expect like the answer, like what will the future be? And I just want to take a moment to just recommend, hey, um, what I may say or what Patrick may say is not how an ANCAP society would be. It's just a matter of what might the market come up with. I would predict some kind of either insurance-based solution that people pay into and they agree to follow a certain set of rules with a specified limits of what kind of punishment would be administered. Like, I think it's unlikely to, like, if I were running that business, I wouldn't want to, like, pay for people's incarceration if they did something wrong, like the current jail system. Like, to make the people who got wronged pay for it, that seems kind of stupid. I want them to be productive. Yeah, it's kind of very backwards. I want them to be productive in some way.
Re-victimize the victims. Yeah.
Yeah, again and again and again. And then also for the ones that didn't even victimize them in the first place, in the current jail system, you have to pay for everybody, even though you're being victimized over all this. It's crazy. What I would want is some kind of agreed upon contract that I can like literally look at and see, hey, this is what we're all agreeing to before we get into a situation of somebody's accidentally hit into my car or somebody's road raging and like threatening to murder me while I'm driving my car. That's two different things in my opinion. So I would want a difference in that, especially because I have cameras in my car that are recording everything. So if somebody's like, "Yeah, what are you doing?" I'd be able to prove it to whatever the third party is or whatever. I wouldn't necessarily want to have something that's like, "Hey, you bumped my car," and then 10 years later, "My name is Inigo Montoya. You bumped into my fender. Prepare to die." I don't want that, So,
right. Yeah.
Prepare to die.
Yep.
What would you want, Patrick?
There's a couple like core fundamental concepts that I think are important in like the common law justice system, like disinterested justice. So like arbitration by an unbiased or impartial person, I think leads to better outcomes. Again, this stuff, like you said, will all be decided by the market if most people want this type of thing, right? The other thing is, a time limit, like we talked about, like what's the word?
Statute of limitations.
Statute of limitations. I don't know if that the current exact implementation of statute of limitations would ever be a thing, but yeah, like vigilante justice is scary. When you take justice into your own hands, it's scary because you often overdo what's probably reasonable. Like it tends to escalate.
I'm not part of that. I just want to clarify that right now.
Sure. But like, when somebody does something to you, you tend to respond with defensive force that's slightly above where they were as a deterrent. And then, it could just escalate in that way is all I'm saying. So it's best to have like neutral people that handle it, which means that, you, like you are now, are semi sort of barred from revenge or justice on your own. It's called vigilante justice for that reason. I think that's probably the biggest change that is probably good. As long as you have justice people you can trust, unlike now. That's the big difference. It's easy to say, okay, well, the justice system we have now provides that, and I don't really trust it. Well, it's because right now, they're not accountable. So if they provide partial justice, and I like the opposite of impartial, so like if they provide biased justice or crappy justice or justice that doesn't provide enough restitution or doesn't, do what it needs to do, you have no choice. You can't go anywhere. But if there's competition and I don't like how one company is doing justice, or, I hear my friend that, sought justice when he was attacked or damaged or stolen from, and his company didn't adjudicate it properly, I'm going to go with a different company, and people are going to go with the company that provides the best justice, probably. I think that's the solution.
Patrick, won't this lead to a raging band of competing companies to try to control everyone's actions every day from here into eternity, creating an even larger war of all against all, you goddamned anarchist?
No. No, it won't. Because as soon as one company starts overstepping its bounds severely in that way, their customers are going to flock to the competition. They're going to lose their funding. Their board of directors is going to shut down the CEO's plans for world domination immediately. That's how the market works, unlike what we even have now, actually. Right now, like, the Patreon, PayPal, MasterCard cartel can unilaterally silence somebody from the face of the earth. So, like, the last thing I want to say is that, like, specifically how I would want it to be handled in a free society when it comes to revenge is that it just wouldn't really be a thing that you would want people to do. Like, again, it's just vigilante justice. That's what revenge really is. It's you trying to get back at somebody, especially in situations where restitution is not possible. And really the only situation in which restitution is not possible, let me know if you can think of any others, would be murder or rape. Maybe even rape might be restitutable.
Loss of limb. That I would have a hard time ever being made whole from that. Like, cut off both my arms. What am I going to do?
That's another big change.
I can't work.
That's another big difference between state of nature and sort of polite society, is that what defines adequate restitution goes from being the victim's judgment and consent to your dispute resolution organization. They sort of get the final say into when you've received enough restitution and you need to be satisfied. That's something else that would probably
your
change.
Your say is melded up whenever you sign the contract with them. So you agree to it before.
Right.
Or you agree to let them arbitrate on your behalf and say, you know what, you're getting cut off this gravy train. You've made enough off of that finger.
Very true. Very true. All right, so Merry Christmas, brother. I hope I hope that this discussion was to your liking. If we missed something or went down a track that you weren't quite intending, drop us another message or content submission, and maybe we'll revisit. Thanks for watching.